Ladies and gentlemen, we have some dramatic developments on the Rem and Sam podcast. There is war in the air right now because I think somebody just put a hit on the Rem and Sam podcast. So I was out running errands earlier. And so typically when I'm driving around town, I don't normally like take the highway or the interstate. I just, keep it simple on the car, put around town. Plus everywhere I go is pretty close. But I just got new brakes on my car earlier today. So I had to go across town. I was like, okay, I'll get to test them out. Let's see what we got going on here. But I was driving and came up behind this truck, and this truck was already driving behind another semi truck. These are two semi trucks, but I'm driving up, get up behind them, like, wait a second to kind of see what the truck is going to do. And then he's going a little bit slower. A couple of trucks stacked up on each other is not necessarily going to be flying down the highway, but decide, okay, we got to pass this guy, get around him. So make the move, signal on. I feel like everything's going good, but about halfway up the pass for this first truck, he decides it's time to go. So he starts going over into the other lane. It's kind of aggressive as well, too. I feel like, truck drivers, I don't know if I have a great relationship with all the truck drivers out there. But I would say it's a probably 60-40. That's a generous split for good truck drivers. Maybe 35, 65, 60, 70, 30. I don't know if I gonna keep creeping down, but this guy, mad aggressive into the other lane. Well, I'm able to speed up and get around him, but I'm almost off the road at this point, basically driving on the shoulder. The rumble strip's going off. Luckily, the other truck is just chilling right there. That's why everybody's passing this guy, but we're able to speed up, get around him. But I'm trying to think back on the situation of what possibly could have gone wrong there, because I feel like where I was at with this truck in the past, I said about halfway, but I'm making pretty good speed where I'm able to speed around him as he's moving in. So I feel like I was creeping into, like, I was at least out of his blind spot before he was moved into the lane. And I feel like he definitely would have saw me at some point to either get back in or try something else. But this guy was just going. I'm trying to even remember if he blared his horn at me at one point. But again, I was like mostly all the way through. So I would take accountability if this was on me. I'm trying to think back on the scenario as well, too. Maybe is a double truck pass a little too aggressive? I don't know. Did they teach us that in driver's ed about passing two trucks back to back? That was a while ago at this point. There's not a lot of things I could say that were a while ago, but I feel like I don't know. I feel like I would have remembered that if they would have said something about that. But regardless, this guy tried to run me off the road. I don't know which one of these other sports shows, which one of these other podcasts have decided that it's time to take out the Rem and Sam podcast. But make no mistake, where there's fire, there's smoke. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Like, wherever there's burning stuff, the Rem and Sam podcast is going to get involved. If these guys are going to want to beef, then we'll figure out a way to retaliate to the rest of these sports shows. Because, we have a good time here. Me and Sam, we're buddies. We like hanging out. Sometimes we throw a jab at Stephen A. Sometimes Priscilla gets in the crosshairs. It is what it is. And sometimes it is what it is, gets in the crosshairs as well, too. But this might be a step too far. So make no mistake, guys. If y'all want to beef with the Rem and Sam podcast, the Rem and Sam podcast can retaliate. So this will be, there's no 20v whatever here. It's 2v. And I guess shout out to IT as well, too. Can't forget IT, the boys in the booth. But IT also says there's nothing on passing two trucks at once. But again, I feel like I'll even take like 10%. It is 10% even way I feel like too aggressive in this situation. I'm just trying to make sure that I was the only one to witness this. So I'm just trying to make sure that I give a good view of, a good overview of what happened. But I feel like if these guys gonna want to go to war, the Rem and Sam podcasts are ready to battle. So I also was after I got in the move, you got to teach this guy a lesson. So the other thing about driving a truck, like, car versus truck, there's not a lot of things. And I'm not a road rage guy in general here, but there's not like a thing you could do in a car to a truck, and this is just stuff you think about as well, too, after something like this happens. But, so you can't like brake check a truck or make an aggressive move or whatever. So you got to, of course, got to use all the weapons at your disposal is it too crazy to throw up the finger and a loser on the forehead? Does that cancel out? Does that make it my fault if I go to the loser on the forehead? But again, I'm just trying to go to all the, you got to use all the tools in your toolbox. I'm fighting with a Nissan Versa versus a semi truck here. So I feel like that might have been a weak move, but regardless, the Rem and Sam podcast will come back with a stronger move than the finger L on the forehead combination for the truck drivers. But I mean, we can beef with all the sports shows. We'll also beef with truck drivers as well, too. And I don't know if we want to necessarily do that because it's like, perfect demo. It's like exactly who the Rem and Sam podcast is for. I mean, guys that are just paid to sit in front of a speaker for several hours. But I mean, it is probably like a 90-10 split of good truck drivers to bad semi-truck drivers. It is. You guys get your act together. That's all the retaliation we'll do for the truck drivers is just, clean it up a little bit, guys. I don't know if there was a lot lizard involved or what was going on here, but get your act together if you're a truck driver. But the sports shows, the sports podcasts, they will feel the wrath of the Rem and Sam podcast. I was also thinking about this too when I was driving around. There was like a old episode. There was an episode on the I Love Lucy show where I'm trying to remember if I get this episode straight. This might be a couple episodes that I'm merging into one, but they're going to invest in like an oil well. So they think they're going to be super rich. So Ricky starts like they're all of them are like shopping around. And of course, Ricky's like, you guys shouldn't be doing this because this is irresponsible. And then they get a phone call that Ricky's been shopping for cars and he was part of the custom car he was shopping for had a custom horn. And I'm trying to remember the song too that he always played on his drums. It's not La Cucaracha, but it's one of those classic mariachi songs. But he was trying to get a custom car horn that played that song. So I was trying to think if you could just get like a big old FU horn on your car to just blare at these truck drivers when you're driving around or just yell things at them. I mean, okay, it looks like you can definitely get like intercom systems and big things to hook up, but we want to investigate. I want like a wheel thing, I want something that I can honk. I pause. That's crazy, but I want like a standard. Well, let's rephrase it. I want just like a standard car horn to use if even that's a little crazy, but just like a standard car horn in case of emergency, in case anything like this happens again. A horn that operates like a standard car horn that just plays something mad aggressive. A talking hamster buddy? I don't want a talking hamster buddy. I want a talking car horn. You can get turbo horns, all that stuff. I feel like it's out there. If we DM the Rem and Sam podcast, if somebody listens, makes custom car horns and they want to hook us up with something, or I guess we'll throw a couple of those like old timey speakers. Did they have those in like Back to the Future on one of the cars driving around the town, like the old timey speaker? Like I think it's the campaign guy, the guy drive the campaign thing. We'll even take a setup like that if you guys want to hook us up with that. But speaking of feeling the rat, there was big weekend for Netflix, the Roast of Tom Brady, the Cat Williams special. Netflix is just going all in on the live content right now. It's been pretty interesting to see. There's also been a live John Mulaney talk show as well too that's been streaming on Netflix the last couple of nights. I'm not sure how long they're doing it, but I think I remember now saying that they're going to do it for like a week, 6 or 7 episodes. So we'll be coming up on the end of that soon. But the Tom Brady roast and the Cat Williams special too were both streamed live as well on Netflix this weekend. And I gotta say, I love the roast. It's another great reason to have Paramount Plus to get all the old Comedy Central roasts on there. The last one that we had, was it the De Niro one or was it Alec Baldwin? The last one that was like, that really hit as well too, was probably even a little longer ago than that. But the last one was, the last one was Alec Baldwin. Oh, De Niro was just one of the roasters. That's right. I remember seeing his face there though. But Baldwin was the last one. Bruce Willis was the one before that. That was Alec Baldwin in 2019 on Comedy Central, and then Bruce Willis in 2018, and then Rob Lowe in 2016. So at that point, those last two kind of don't even count as well too. I get there's only a year gap in there, but for probably, when was the first one? I think like 02, 03 was the first Comedy Central roast. Obviously the roasts go way back to like Friars Club and Johnny Carson and Lucille Ball and all those guys. But for my era, for the ones that I was seeing, and I guess I wasn't watching the 03 roast live, but for the ones that I'm familiar with, the Comedy Central roast, they start in 03, and then there's a gap in 04, but then they go back to back in 05 with Foxworthy and Pamela Anderson. Pause. But after that, it's basically at least one a year all the way up until 2016, and then 17, they don't do it. Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin in 2019. So I'm also kind of looking at the ratings here because I was trying to figure out, just in general, after watching this Tom Brady roast, why the roast had gone away. And the Bruce Willis one was down a little bit. I get the Rob Lowe one in 2016 too. Looks like it didn't do great numbers, but I don't know. That one's pretty solid. Who was that? Spade hosting that one? That one's got Ann Coulter on the day. So that's probably why nobody ended up wanting to watch. I mean, come on. But you get Manning, Rob Riggle, Pete Davidson. Yeah, Spade hosted that one, which was a good time. But I kind of, like I said, I'm kind of disappointed that they had gone away. And I'm glad that Netflix at least brought it back for this. I don't know if this is something that a series that Netflix is going to do. I guess here, I should look up too if they've done another one already, if they have other roasts on Netflix. But I mean, this is obviously the first one stream live, and it would be tough if I said I love the roast, but there was these secret ones on Netflix that I didn't end up watching. National roast. Oh yeah, there's the Jeff Ross show. Okay, so apparently I missed this Jonas Brothers roast. What year was this? When did they do a Jonas Brothers roast? I was going to say that this was kind of early to be doing a Brady roast, because a lot of the people that have gotten roasted, especially recently, have been at it's like the career post roast and pre roast is definitely like, okay, the better. A lot of people, you're probably drafting the pre roast career for some of these guys. I mean, you get Trump gets roasted in 2011 and then ends up becoming president. So I don't know if you want to say stock up or down for that, but Brady, I mean, he just retired, two seasons ago, 1 season ago. Was this last year, the first year without Brady? I guess, yeah, he retired 2 seasons ago, but then came back. But, only out of football, 1 year, is about to enter like a 10-year broadcast deal, and like is really being hyped up as this like media protege. I know the Romo thing has kind of cooled off a little bit over the last couple of years, and cooled off is probably even a nice way to say it, which is the conversation around Romo. I still think Romo does a good job of calling games. I don't think he was in his bag picking, reading the plays and calling the offenses there for a little bit, and he still does that when he's locked in, obviously. But I still have enough Romo stock to be in, but obviously the position of number one color guy is definitely up there for the maybe there's like an interim belt right now if it's like a UFC analogy. I don't know who would even have that. I guess does Aikman or Collinsworth definitely doesn't have it on the internet. Maybe Aikman does right now. But does Moose Johnson just have it for mixing up Riley Reef with Riley Reid? I think at this point amongst the color guys, that might be the strongest moment. But Brady is like the guy that's going to just transform how we're going to view football, and he's just the charisma. And I mean, you saw a lot of this stuff in this roast as well too. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying the career that Brady has left is like he's about to enter this whole new off-field phase, whereas I guess a lot of these other people were in a little bit of a different spot. Yeah, you got the Jonas Brothers in here. Are you guys drafting the Jonas Brothers solo careers or the careers together? I mean, come on, year 3000. That alone right there, you might just have to take the pre-roast career. But DM us on Rem and Sam if you want pre-Jonas Brothers roast or post-Jonas Brothers roast. It would have been 2021. So I guess I don't know what music the Joe Bros have been releasing since then, but I can just already just see all the Kevin jokes as like, oh, we don't even know who you are. John Legend. Okay, Pete, I'll definitely go skim through this one. Pete Davidson was on here. Keenan Thompson is hosting. It's definitely a solid dais, but it does not look like Netflix has done much else in the roast column besides this Tom Brady one. So I don't know if in general too the roast, I guess nobody owns that right, because you can go on YouTube. I get like Legion of Skanks is done. Like I don't know if the roast of Louis J. Gomez counts in this conversation. Shout out to our guy, but call in if you want. But there are like, I guess, because those other people have done it. So it's not like nobody owns the roast idea, but the fact that it's been just sitting there vacant for one of these people to pick it up. Obviously a streamer would, but Netflix doing it, and they're obviously at the forefront of comedy and have been kind of ramping up what they've been doing, especially on the special. I mean, they've been basically a special a week at this point. And like we said, they just had the Cat Williams special the day before this, and then the Netflix is a joke fest is going on right now, so the comedy is definitely an emphasis. But you get Kevin Hart next week as well too, with the Mark Twain Prize, and just again a slew of great specials this year. But Netflix getting into the roast game is definitely exciting. I definitely hope it's something that they will continue. It's definitely something that I hope that they will continue to do. And a lot of people were, in respect as well too, giving Brady credit for actually being willing to do this, which I guess is obviously probably just a big reason why the roasts have gone away. It's just nobody wants to do them. But also, the dais that they had there too was just, you got Schultz, Glaser, Tom Segura, and Burt Kreischer, Sam J, and Kevin Hart hosting, obviously, but just incredibly strong stand-ups on the dais. And if you think about that period as well too, from 2016, from when that last Rob Lowe roast was. I know that was, again, the numbers for that weren't good. So let's see, the last good numbers roast would have been the Justin Bieber roast in 2015. So you just think about the development of comedy and stand-up in, I guess, the last 10 years almost. A lot of these talents too were undiscovered at this point, still working their way up. And the fact that stand-up has boomed the way it has, a lot of people just in general too are wondering when comedy is going to come back in a big industry way. But as industry, shifts over to these streamers, and as these guys continue to hold more power, like I get, Netflix is obviously doing it. So to bring in Brady to do this, to bring in the stand-ups is, I think the fact, and we were saying this with bringing in, when they brought in Bergazzi for SNL, and then they since on SNL too, they gotten Shane Gillis, but just the fact that the stand-ups are as strong as they are right now in the comedy game is like the comedy revolution is definitely stemming from the stand-up game. And if you think about when comedy has been at its strongest, it has been when stand-up has been at its strongest. I mean, SNL was at its funniest in the the 90s and early 2000s, when you got Sandler and Spade and all of those guys. And I know a lot of the SNL talent over the years has been, you get improv people and theater people as well too that are in the mix. But the fact that we're in a stand-up boom right now is, I think, going to potentially bring comedy back in a in a big like industry type way, where we're seeing these big type of things. And this one was, they definitely went all out with this roast as well too, because they held this one in the Forum, which if you go back and look at a lot of those Comedy Central roasts, those are all in theaters, 4,000, 2,000 people. This is a full basketball arena, completely sold out, which can you like buy tickets now? If Netflix like does another roast, I don't know if they'll do another one in an arena, but I guess I didn't even think about that too with, going back to the Comedy Central roast. But can you just like buy a ticket and just go to the roast? Were the tickets for the roast of Tom Brady just on SeatGeek? And I just didn't look. But SeatGeek, slide us some tickets to the next roast if they're on there. We'd appreciate it. I'm not saying slide us some. Again, we'll hook you guys up with some money. I'm just saying put some aside. Slide in the DM SeatGeek and let us know if these roasts or that's the, as a customer service guy, that's the thing. It's like, no, or you just, as the customer, you could also do the work yourself too and figure it out. So maybe that's the way to go. But again, the fact that this was in the Forum, and the fact that too, you got all these comedians that, Schultz is an arena act, Sugar, these guys are used to playing in front of these big crowds, but again, this was a great roast. I felt like for it to be a great roast too in that arena is almost even more impressive. So they were branding this one as the greatest roast of all time. And I mean, in terms of this versus the Comedy Central roast, this definitely met, I would say it met expectations in terms of it being super funny. And the fact that it was funny on this grandioso type scale is, I think, the thing that definitely could, I think you could say, yeah, this is probably the best roast that has been done in that time span of the Comedy Central and this now Netflix one. And even, hey, if they want to throw the Jonas Brothers in the mix and try to see if they can get on the podium, give them a shot. But I guess we'll have to go back and look at like those, see if we can find the old roast on YouTube, do the deep dive on the old Carson roast and the Rick. I definitely have seen a lot of the Rickles sets already and the Rickles clips, but we'll go through and watch a bunch of the full roast. But again, in terms of this versus the Comedy Central, right up there, every bit is funny as well too, and unedited, which is not something that as a viewer I would have necessarily had thought about watching back in the day, those old Comedy Central roasts. But the unedited thing was great. And now going back to and watching those after watching this, I went back and watched a couple of them, but skimmed through them. But you can kind of see some of the moments where, oh, there's a cut there. Okay. It definitely becomes a little bit more noticeable. And I thought that going unedited and just saying, hey, we're willing to whatever happens, and just, obviously I'm sure there is some trust in the people as well too. But, those guys are all willing to, in terms of comedy, like be unhinged. And Netflix was obviously willing to say, hey, we agree that we can let you guys do that. I assume so. We'll see if they start doing shows and stuff and talking about it. If there is like if they say some stuff, if producers got in the way. But I mean, if they did, the talent that was on stage was definitely able to work around it, and it was just absolutely fantastic. So, like a great roast, and the fact that everybody too also had to follow Kevin Hart was almost as equally impressive, because Kevin Hart now, there's only been a couple of guys that have actually hosted the roast multiple times. I think Seth MacFarlane hosted like 3 in a row, but Kevin Hart would have hosted back in, was it that Bieber one? Yeah, he hosted that Bieber one in 2015. So it's been almost a decade now for Kevin Hart in between hosting roasts. And if you just think about a guy that could pull off hosting, again, at such a large scale in front of an arena, I mean, he is probably I think there was a Chappelle joke about, hey, I think, I forget who would have made that, but I guess it would have been Brady about, oh, I tried to get Chappelle here and it didn't work out. But, and this is no disrespect to Chappelle, but obviously now that I'm thinking about it too, Chappelle would have crushed in his own way in that hosting role. But the energy that Kevin Hart is able to bring at that kind of spot is definitely unique. And the star that he's become too, even in the last 10 years versus where he was at in 2015, I think he was still, pretty close to doing the stadium special. Let me see when he did the stadium special. Was that What Now in Philly? And I want to say that was in 2019 when he recorded that one, but I don't know if I can find it, but it was in a couple years after this, in this time span. So as a stand-up, he was obviously one of the bigger stand-ups in the game at that point, but he's now the movies and the kids, and it just everybody, he's become one of just the biggest stars in the industry in general. They made the jokes about him not turning down a movie role as well, but it's definitely helped. So again, to bring it back to that Cat Williams special that was on the day before, those two guys, obviously, Cat Williams had his things to say about Kevin Hart, but the impact that Cat Williams had after that special, or after that interview, it's the number one. I think Shannon Sharp said on First Take today that it's now the number one sit down interview in, the internet or whatever. But not just whatever, but whatever the category was. Shout out to Shannon Sharp. It's absolutely incredible. But to cause that kind of chaos and the anticipation for his special. Those, you could argue those are the two just biggest comedians right now in the game, again, especially after the interview and especially what Kevin Hart has done in the industry. And I know, Kevin Hart is definitely operating on a different level as a stand-up than some guy. Schultz, again, those are all arena acts over there, but I don't know if the club scene is the same way for it is with Kevin Hart. I think it is. Like, they kind of talk about him like it is. And it definitely was back in this 2015 days. But now, I think, he did like a Rogan appearance a couple of times over that stretch. But now I would be curious to see like how often he's going into the clubs. I bet Kevin Hart is a hard worker. I bet he still does it all the time. But again, those are probably the two biggest guys. So back-to-back nights to get to see them, Cat Williams, this is his material. And it's not like this is Kevin Hart's material, but he had his own little set. And then, it's just, again, just being funny throughout the night. So I don't know if he necessarily, the Cat Williams special was awesome. And I think it was incredibly funny. I was seeing some stuff online about how it didn't hit, but the thing is like the bar for Cat Williams is too high at this point. Like Pimp Chronicles is probably the best special of the century up until this point. I'm trying to think since 2000. It's either that or so Pimp Chronicles and Shanks for the Memories, Dave Attell would be the two that come to mind right at pause as like number one special. Those are the first two that I thought of. But I mean, the Pimp Chronicles is definitely in that conversation. So for one, it's like, okay, is anything going to be funnier than the Pimp Chronicles? But I don't know if he needed like 17 minutes of Jacksonville material to open this one, like a couple of the last ones. But yeah, I thought all of his premises were super strong. I don't, again, the punchlines were all good too. For Cat Williams, if you thought for Cat Williams, it was like a B+, then, it is what it is. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I thought Kevin Hart, just the hosting job that he did, and then not just being funny, but also just, being like a real dude and then being in the moment where, after Belichick goes up, about halfway through at this point, I mean, everybody's a little drunk up at that point. So I'm sure there's a reason that the emotions are flowing, but, Belichick goes up there and he acknowledges, hey, that there has been rumors about what your relationship is. You guys are still willing to get together to do this and just to kind of orchestrate a moment there. And then to do it again later too, with Kraft as well too. And again, just to the humor, but then to also be like, hey, we have a chance here to, make the uncomfortable comfortable, which is what he was, the theme of the night. It is honestly kind of just it's a thing with comedy, but a thing that I think Kevin Hart definitely verbalizes very well as well too. So just every beat he had for the night was absolutely perfect. And just the jiu-jitsu coach jokes just right away where, the Giselle stuff is like, some of the most sensitive stuff that probably, if the most, I know there wasn't really any like parental jokes as well too in there. So I don't know if anybody would want to make fun of their parents. I know Jeff Ross had the staying in the pocket joke, but I guess that's more on Brady because he said that Brady's mom was in labor for like 40 plus hours with him. So talk about staying in the pocket. But outside of anything like what they were going to talk about, that was probably the most, probably sensitive, obviously the most sensitive thing they could have done. And the Kevin Hart jokes about it, where it's like, okay, I don't know if anybody's going to, everybody's going to be funny doing their jokes. And it's like, okay, we get to hear their takes on it in their own voices, but it's like nothing's going to be funnier than that, than the Kevin Hart version of it. And just, again, every beat he had, absolutely perfect, totally killed it. So shout out to him. And it was also fun to see him on the stage and to see him be doing jokes as well, too, at the same time as like Scholes and Kreischer and Segura. Because, again, I know they're all, constantly working as comics, but there hasn't been a lot of crossover between Kevin Hart and those guys necessarily. So it was fun to see all those guys be funny on the same stage. And again, you see Kevin Hart with those guys all in the same arena, and you're like, oh yeah, Kevin Hart is probably the funniest dude in the world. This guy's just absolutely hilarious. So again, he absolutely killed it. Probably now best roast host. A lot of best stuff potential out of this roast. Best, just I guess if that's what you get if you get the potential greatest roast of all time. But then after Kevin Hart, Jeff Ross is just first one up. He crushes. He was the only one where Brady got offended at the joke, which was the Robert Kraft massage joke. Again, with all of the Giselle stuff, I was a little like, okay, the Robert Kraft stuff is going to be, and I know, the way he was connecting it to Brady, Brady's always been very like, oh, I'm a hard worker, but yeah, and there's But, it's complicated. But I was like, okay, that's going to be the thing that gets Brady. And then Jeff Ross is after Kevin Hart. This is like the first roaster officially going. I'm trying to think, they didn't have like an athlete in there. I'm trying to remember if it was actually, I think, yeah, Jeff Ross was the first one up. And Brady's like offended halfway through the first set. Is this going to just be like go off the rails all night? But I mean, Ross, he handled it well. And I think Brady, he did do like the Will Smith, like, do I go up there, where he kind of like turns in his seat a little. Like at first he was like laughing, and then he kind of like turns in his seat and kind of looks at him. And then the camera just cuts to Jeff Ross, and then you see Brady go into the shot. Like, let's not say that again. And Ross is just, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. But yeah, outside of that, the Ross set was, I mean, just, classic Jeff Ross, absolutely nailed it. And then, so on one side of the dais, you have all the comics. And then on the other side of the dais, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I have a timer going off. There is a chicken Alfredo in the oven right now. So give me 1 second. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen. We had to take care of the food there. Did I say chicken Alfredo was in the oven? I was thinking about that. Did that make sense? It's like a chicken Alfredo casserole, like a take and bake type of thing. So we'll see how much of it my brother leaves for me when he slides over, because that man's not making his own food. But it is mighty fine dining. But what did I said? I had Drew Bledsoe written down as the last thing. So yeah, Kevin Hart, Jeff Ross, then Drew Bledsoe went. And Drew Bledsoe was the first of the athletes to roast Tom Brady. So you had athletes on one side of the dais, and then comics on the other side of the dais, but then athletes on both sides of the dais as well too. So when they first go out, I mean, you kind of know who the roasters are going to be at, but a lot of times just the dais is just the roasters, whereas they had like all of Brady's teammates up there. So I guess, Brady's a big old, shout out to Brady for being a team player. But I was like, oh, are we going to hear from like all of these guys? And I mean, this thing was 3 hours long, so we might as well have heard from all of them. But unfortunately, just for the sake of time, I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't have liked to heard what Rodney Harris and Willie McGinnis would have said about Tom Brady, but for the sake of time, maybe we'll save it for the greatest roast of Tom Brady part 2. They didn't do all of the entire dais go up and roast him, but athletes on one side, comics on the other. And it was Bledsoe, Edelman, and Gronk there originally. And then Belichick goes out, joins him on the dais. Belichick too sits like 3 people down from Brady. So I know, that would have been kind of weird for him to just go and sit next to Brady between him and Kevin Hart, but it was like, oh, definitely spaced out here. So it was those 3 were the main athlete roasters. I guess Dana White doesn't count as a athlete roaster, plus not a Brady teammate in the way we're talking about, but it's kind of like, okay, I know Manning has done the roast, and I get Manning was another one who at the end for some reason made an appearance and, had a pretty funny set, though. I don't really know. Again, 3 hours. They probably, in the edited version, they probably just take out the last 2, the Affleck and Peyton Manning sets for the sake of the commercials. But when you get all the athlete roasters, it's like, okay, how funny are all of those guys going to be? But they all crushed it as well too. And again, they have it's not like Drew Bledsoe is like, you have to write your own roast about Tom Brady. He has help. He's going to have, hopefully some pretty strong material. And especially if he's willing to, be accepting of the material that he's given as well too, he's probably going to have some pretty strong jokes. So it really is on the athlete to have good delivery. And all those guys, I was really impressed with how they were able to perform. Again, does one of the athletes there have a tequila or something? Does Brady have a alcohol? Let's see if Brady has a liquor that people were drinking. He kept swirling his glass a couple times, so I don't know if he was promoting something. Tom Brady and tequila. Nothing obvious anyways. There's an avocado margarita maybe that he likes, but I guess he's not attached to anything. So if I'm slipping, if something's slipping my mind that I should be thinking of, I guess the 2 Bears, they've got their own drink. The Dos Ojos. I should know what 2 Bears is in Spanish, but I think I just said 2 eyes. But I guess if they were all drinking the 2 Bears drink, then that definitely helps with the delivery. But Bledsoe was great. I get Bledsoe has his own wine. There we go. That's what I was thinking about. Drew Bledsoe has his own wine. It's his favorite wine. And Tom Brady's favorite wine is "Where's the flag?" So all the athletes did a great job with the delivery. Edelman, Gronk like kind of was the headliner for the Tom Brady teammates, was the last one of those guys to perform. So he did a great job. Gronk was like improving at one point. He's like calling out the sisters. And then was there like another joke and then he's like, I wrote one of these jokes. So, I mean, shout out to Gronk for just taking credit for all of his stuff, for all, I mean, and it was all pretty funny. So shout out to him for thinking of it, but classic Gronk. And he crushed. The Edelman stuff was great. So all the athletes, I thought, exceeded expectations. And again, to do it in an arena, like Drew Bledsoe just crushing in front of 17,000 people. Like I'm sure there were some comics watching that. Like, what do I have to do to get to what Drew Bledsoe to this point? It's, well, you get, have a great college career, number 1 overall pick, and then injury-riddled NFL career, unfortunately, and get benched for the greatest quarterback of all time, which I guess if you're going to get benched for anybody, it's like, okay, at least I got replaced by Tom Brady. I guess the Romo thing doesn't help in terms of that. Nobody brought up the Romo replacement. There wasn't like a lot of football jokes in this one, which I mean is not, maybe not necessarily surprising, but Kevin Hart was like, oh, is this the roast? At the beginning is like, we're roasting the greatest quarterback of all time. Oh, Joe Montana? Joe Montana's here? Which I don't know what's more offensive, if it's Joe Montana or Pat Mahomes. It's like, hey, Pat Mahomes in 6 seasons. I guess Pat Mahomes might be offensive to Joe Montana. I mean, you got to get the man has respect this point, even if we all know he would take Mahomes in the fantasy draft. But no surprise it was focused on a lot of the off-field stuff. Also, no jokes about kissing. Was that another off-limits thing? I wonder. Was Tom Brady kissing his son off limits on the roast? Because nobody mentioned it. And I think there was even a point where he kissed Kevin Hart, or he really looked like he was going for, and it was early in the night too. I don't even know if he could blame the alcohol at that point. Though we don't know. We didn't get necessarily a live, Netflix wasn't live streaming the Tom Brady pregame to the greatest roast of all time as well too. But nobody made jokes about him kissing his son. It's right there on the table. Maybe that was another off limits topic for him. But after Bledsoe, we got Nikki Glacier, which again, like, how do you follow Kevin Hart? And then Nikki Glacier gets up there and just absolutely crushes, has probably the best set of the night. And I'm going to, steal a BS line here, but I wish we could bet like who the funniest person would have been, because no disrespect to Glacier, but I feel like, Schultz ends up headlining this thing. You're probably going, okay, Schultz is, especially in a roast, definitely a pretty safe option to have a strong set. I mean, all these guys they're safe options. Picking nits, just having fun. But you got the 2 Bears up there as well too. So maybe I'm just being secretly sexist, but Nikki Glacier ends up winning the night. Definitely get her at plus odds. I will say there was plus odds. That's no disrespect. Plus odds on the Nikki Glacier set to be the funniest, and it definitely was. I went back and skimmed through the roast one time, but I've watched the Nikki Glacier set a couple of times. It's just absolutely hilarious. When she does one of the Tard jokes, they cut to Shane Gillis, which was pretty funny, which was another thing that happened another thing that I noticed when like they do the intro, they show Tom Brady, they're showing all the people in the crowd. It's like, okay, that person has a Netflix deal. That person's been on Netflix. That person's been on Netflix. I mean, just look at the dais. Nikki Glacier, her next special that's just about to drop. Let's see when. I think that might be on the 11th. Is that going to drop the same day as the Kevin Hart Mark Twain prize on Netflix? It just might, but not Nicki Minaj special. Nikki Glacier. I feel like if we search Nicki Minaj special, we might have to do that in an incognito tab. But I think her next special is on HBO. But the Segura's a Netflix guy. Schultz has been on. He didn't. His last special he bought back from the streamer, but he did the series over COVID for Netflix. Kreischer's obviously been on Netflix. Jeff Ross and David Tell have a special together on Netflix. So, and maybe it's just Netflix is definitely they've shelled out a ton of money across the industry, and it's like, okay, now it's maybe it's like a little like a Marvel thing where you're like, oh, everybody is just been in a Marvel movie, and it's like, oh, everybody is worked for Netflix in some capacity, but it was like, okay, was the forum just the upper bowl tickets and then the lower bowl, like they made all the Netflix people show up? I mean, Joel McHale, does he have a Netflix deal? I don't think Rich Eisen definitely doesn't have a Netflix deal. I think his show is on Roku TV, but he was there. LA guys, the sports people are going to pull up for Tom Brady. University of Michigan alum, Rich Eisen as well too. So, he's got to support the home team, but definitely where Gillis, when they cut to Gillis, I was like, oh, I wonder if, and I get Gillis is performing at the fest as well too. So there's all of that stuff is involved, but definitely a ton of Netflix people in the crowd. But Glacier killed, definitely the funniest set. And unfortunately, Randy Moss had to follow Nikki Glacier, which was just going to be impossible. So he probably got burnt harder. Of all the roasts, Randy Moss got burnt the worst by having to follow Nikki Glacier in a quarter neck underneath a suit, which Peyton Manning is the quarter neck guy, and even he knows to put on a tie for that event. He knows how to dress for the occasion. So, and maybe it was like is it tweed? Is that like the right? I don't know. Whatever that the patterns and stuff. Did he have elbow patches? I'm pretty sure there was elbow patches on the Randy Moss suit, but he also got lucky that it was unedited because he probably gets like 3 jokes in the edited version on Comedy Central. But after Moss, Kim K does the special appearance. So you get all the special appearances throughout the night. You have Belichick. Dana White does like when Hinchcliffe goes up, they do like a quick kill Tony bit. And Dana White shows up. Like I said, Manning shows up. Kim K shows up. So I think I was trying to, after she popped up, I was like, okay, Tom Brady dating. Is this like a Tom Brady play? I think Tom Brady is currently not single, but I mean, Kim K going up there, making eyes at, like, I think Glacier was definitely doing it for comedy, but I don't think Glacier has a boyfriend that she's been with for 10 years either too. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was just for the joke. So I don't know if all the Glacier stuff was definitely comedy, but I felt like for a second there, I didn't know if we were at the forum or the USC campus with how hard they were booing Kim K. I guess is it Taylor Swift stuff that has got everybody beefing right now because I don't know. I didn't know we all hated Kim K like that. I guess I'm just following the Instagram account, but she got up there, made her special appearance. Then you've got Kreischer and Tom Segura after that. 2 bears and 1 set caving in on itself. It was a great set. They had a funny set. The Berg Kreischer, when they were looking at the picture of Brady holding the football shirtless, and he just goes, "Are you pregnant?" One of the great like throwaway lines of the evening. Like if we were just ranking lines, that's like a strong case to be in the top. I was going to say top 5, maybe top 10, but that's a big list of jokes at that point. I guess, ton of jokes in the roast. Sam J as well too. I thought Glacier was probably funniest, and then Sam J was a very, very close second. Absolutely hilarious. The Kreischer stuff was just you don't even know how to be fat and famous, right? Was just absolutely hilarious. If you were actually talented, Farley, all these guys they overdosed on, just cocaine and talent. It was perfect stuff. The Brady roast where it's like, in a roast, the jokes are, it's like line. And the Brady thing is like, okay, like walking us through and like painting a picture a little bit. We're like storytelling roasting almost. I guess Hinchcliffe did that a little bit too with the King joke that he had on Kreischer. Do I even remember what it was? If Kreischer looks like if Tiger King and Liver King only ate Burger King and had a liver that looked like Martin Luther King got beat up by Rodney King. One of the great jokes in roast history. Hinchcliffe with back-to-back, the Sam J roast and then the Kreischer roast are like 2 of the great roasts. And again, for when I say that, I'm talking Comedy Central and then this, the Jonas Brothers and then this Tom Brady one. So way up there for absolutely hilarious. No surprise that Hinchcliffe would have a strong set. I would probably say, is that top 3 sets of the night where Hinchcliffe, the Schultz, the thing is though, you got like that top 3 wouldn't even include the headlining set with Schultz being in the, it's like it's why this roast was so great because all these guys were absolutely fantastic. So I can't imagine that there was anything that, in terms of like the production standpoint and letting them be funny, there was anything that was too rough there. It seemed like everything was in place. But I guess we also got a Will Ferrell appearance as well too. I forgot about that. I'm trying to skim through it quickly and try to remember who was all there. I forgot that Anchorman showed up, Ron Burgundy. Will Ferrell definitely now like a classic, gonna make a cameo to roast. I feel like are we at the point now where if Will Ferrell doesn't make a cameo at a roast, it would be disappointing? I guess he probably wasn't at the last two, but with the Baldwin and the Bruce Willis. But I Hater did the Mayor of Hollywood cameo as well too, and he was a roaster who did it. He did his thing as a bit. So I was thinking about that being a Will Ferrell thing for a second too, but I feel like he's definitely been on one other time, so wouldn't mind seeing that as a reoccurring thing. Again, they cut to Gillis, and Gillis was like, "Oh, Anchorman's here. That's pretty sick." Will Ferrell, iconic. But the round of applause for Will Ferrell, I feel like, is it him and Denzel right now as just like the two, just like who are like the most slide in the DMs who the most beloved Hollywood. I mean, the most beloved is, I guess, Denzel, but who's on the Mount Rushmore for beloved Hollywood people? Meryl Streep, in terms of definitely beloved in the industry. I will commit to doing the Meryl Streep movie run soon. I'm currently trying to work through the Bill Murray movies, and we'll put Meryl Streep on the docket. How about that? Meryl Streep, shout out. But most beloved Hollywood person, because I was like, oh, this is again, this is just great that Will Ferrell's here. Everybody, the approval rating for Will Ferrell, I feel like is, I will say 100% in Hollywood, but the 99.9 doctors germ killing thing just to be safe. But yeah, between that and the Cat Williams special, strong weekend for Netflix. The live streaming thing is definitely interesting too with the NBA media rights. I know right now with the conversations for the media rights, we're getting news between NBC and Warner Brothers are kind of the two last people bidding for rights right now, if that's what the reports are saying. But just in general, dipping their toe into the live thing, it seemed to be really successful. I think there was a couple of, outside of maybe a couple of things, it was all great. And then again, the Mulaney show as well too has been a really fun watch for doing like a pop-up talk show where I don't know if that's like his destiny to be a talk show host, because nobody's a talk show host anymore. And the way he's doing this talk show, this little limited show that he's doing, is a little more in lines of what Norm was doing on his talk show. He was also a Netflix guy. Probably would have been at this. Would he have been at no, he definitely would not have been at the roast of at the Forum in front of 17K sitting there. Would it have just been like a table of Norm and Spade and Sandler and all those guys? I guess. Yeah, they can still do most of that, unfortunately. But IT, cut that out. That's too sad. We love Norm. But it was more in line with what Norm was doing on his show, where it's just like super chaotic, no organization. I get, Conan, the thing that was so great about Conan too is he was not afraid for his show to wander into those moments where it does seem like now, and I guess that might be producer things, but it does seem like the shows are just, we're not breaking news here. These things are already dead, but there's just like an uptightness thing to the comedy on network TV right now, where you just see it when it just gets even like back to the Conan days where it just even gets a little bit looser. It just hits so much better. But shout out to Netflix for the big weekend. We will talk more NBA stuff when we get back on this weekend with Sam this coming Saturday for the next episode when that drops. But I did want to say this about the Anthony Edwards Jokic thing quickly, because it's 2-0 right now. Timberwolves are up, won both games in Denver. It's not looking good for the Nuggets. I mean, me and Sam, we did both pick the Timberwolves on the last episode. So I don't know how serious Sam was. That is kind of crazy too, that they beat the Countdown Jinx. We threw I guess the Cavs ended up beating the Countdown Jinx. We both picked the Cavs to win. So maybe, do we actually know how to pick the games? Who knows? But we had the Timberwolves taking over the Nuggets this weekend, but also F1 in Miami this weekend. And I was trying to read up on some articles. I tried to watch a good portion of the race. And, when you watch the race, you have to watch a good portion of the pregame as well, too, which I didn't realize. But there was a lot of articles floating around about what Verstappen's effect has been on the sport, because the sport was definitely rapidly growing in popularity, especially after the Netflix show became such a successful thing. But some of the television numbers haven't necessarily been as successful as they would have liked. There's also been some scheduling stuff where there's just been a lot of races at inconvenient times as well, too, to start the race season. I was reading that in a bunch of articles. But the fact that Verstappen has been this dominant, where it's almost like, okay, he is, I mean, I don't know what the number was for most races in a row, but I mean, he was on Mahomes level. It's like this, he might honestly just have been the most dominant person in sports. I guess maybe like Makachev. John Jones is like, injured. Is he like, we got to put he's in the injury column right now, but technically when he's fighting, I don't know. The tennis guys are all gone, but even the boxing, the boxing guy, dominant boxing guy just got knocked down as well too this weekend. I saw that. So I don't know if he's lost his status in that mix. Tyson Fury, he got knocked down by Ngannou though, but I guess, maybe that was his own fault. But I mean, Verstappen is right in the mix for the top most dominant athlete. Just, it's like, okay, are we going to even watch a race if we know he's going to win? And what has that done for the viewerships, just knowing he's almost a lock? And I want to say, like, fortunately for F1, they get it in America at a convenient time. The lead in to F1 was Game 7 of Cavs Magic. So, I mean, Cavs Magic was buried on NBA TV all playoffs, but Game 7 is a big deal. You get an NBA playoff game, people are going to be watching, at least, see the F1 race is going to be on. So, and then Verstappen, the thing is, at the beginning of the race, Verstappen was leading for, I don't know, if like what a good lead is in F1. I think he was up by like 2.5-ish seconds for a lot of it, but then he like ran into a pole at one point. And I need to ask my brother, I meant to ask him if he got outdriven, because my brother watched it as well too, but if it was like a car thing, because I know there was also car concerns for Verstappen. They were talking about in pregame in the weekend leading up to the race. But just, a couple of things, when I think he still finished like second, but just a couple of things hadn't gone his way this time. And that's the other thing for Verstappen. It's like, you get the best driver and the best car every time. It's just he's gonna win. And they've just been him and Red Bull. He's a Red Bull guy, right? Pretty sure F1 fans don't get mad, but like, you get that combination, and I don't think even an F1 person knows that. It's like that kind of incredible streak is, I don't want to say improbable, but it's like, okay, it's definitely, I don't know for the F1 history thing, but it has to be historic that is happening. So they got a little fortunate that in a big spot, there was able to maybe be a little bit more piqued interest with the fact that he was able to finish in second place. And Edwards as well too in the NBA, where I feel like the Nuggets were kind of teetering on this year, where if they sweep the Lakers, if the Timberwolves, it's like 6, maybe 7. I mean, we expect a good series, but regardless, if they are able to just go through, win the finals this year, back to back for Jokic, he's the best player in the league. Murray, it's just like he's going to hit every clutch shot over any size defender whenever you want him, because that was the thing in that Lakers series too, where he was hitting those shots over Anthony Davis. Now, against this Timberwolves series, most of the time, these guys are having to shoot these shots over 2 players. But it's like, is he just going to hit any shot? Is this guy like what is the shot making degree of separation between him and Steph Curry? It's like all these things are on the table if they run through the playoffs, pause, and just win their second back-to-back title, and then run it back next year, because everybody, the core of that team is in a pretty good contract spot. We could double check the Aaron Gordon potentially, but I know Porter's there. Murray is the one that I'm thinking of that might be the guy, but Jokic is there under contract as well too, which is the main thing. But I feel like not Warriors level dominance, but it would have been like kind of close to that type of expected. Okay, the Nuggets. I don't even know if you would put them on the same parallel of that kind of team, because that Warriors team is just, the talent that they had there was insane. But that kind of just odds on favorite going into the next year, if they're able to get through and win the title. And, we're seeing Edwards, just the balance of the league shifting. And honestly, since that Warriors run, we haven't had a team been able to establish that kind of dominance. And maybe. And, the thing is, again, it's why that Warriors team was so stacked, and the contract rules are definitely in place where now, especially, that would definitely be way harder to happen. But the league is just in a different spot. And the F1 thing is weird too, because, the Jordan thing in the 90s, like Jordan was like, everybody was watching for Jordan. So they love the dominance. I don't think the Brady thing like hurt the NFL where it's like people stopped watching because Tom Brady is dominant. I think the fact that he's in the like, you go back and look and you're like, oh man, this guy was in the AFC Championship game like every year, and even in the Super Bowl like every other year. But it felt like there was still enough going on where, and that's for me especially too, like the first three, the 3 and 4, I wasn't necessarily like watching that live. And then, he does the 3 and 4 again as well too. And that Tampa Bay thing was like, okay, he is inevitable, but even the Tampa Bay thing, he's older at that point, and he does make the revival of his career when he is older. So, that whole middle stretch for Brady, now, he doesn't even win a Super Bowl. So it does, if Jokic it's like, okay, Jokic is going to be at the peak of his powers. Is he going to be really that dominant where he is going to transcend all the talent in this league and just win the title every year? But hey, this is where we're at with the NBA right now. There is just, like we've talked about so many times, the number of good players. Because like people are talking about like, it's totally deserved. Anthony Edwards, face of the league, and there is a homegrown, he's national USA kid that is definitely attached to that. But it's like, okay, Shea, like if they're, tonight as we're recording this, you got Doncic and Shea are about to play game 1 against each other in their playoff series. Let's just say the Timberwolves do beat the Nuggets and it happens. Jokic gets knocked out of the playoffs. They have to like, you get Edwards versus Shea, Edwards versus Doncic, and Doncic is already in that, not like, I don't know if he's in a face of the league type category, but MVP conversation. So he's up there amongst the best players. If he another conference finals appearance in the finals and continues to progress these levels, like there are other players in the playoffs right now that, Anthony Edwards is the most charming, the most like Anthony Edwards is definitely a super electric player, but like, Shea and Doncic and, Tatum as well too could like, it's a big, one of the questions that we have with him in the playoffs, but he is talented enough to ascend to this level where, and the level that Brunson is playing at right now, where, I mean, the changing of the guard, but the amount of guys that can night to night just be like, I'm going to be the best shot maker in the league, where Mitchell just in the fourth quarter of these games against the Magic, it's like, just trade all the first round picks for this guy. I get, he definitely is going to have a high usage rate, but it's like, this guy is just unstoppable going to the basket. Give everything for this guy. So there is just like so much talent in the league, and then talent that's not even in the playoffs. You know where I'm going, and I'm not just trying to bring this whole thing back around to Wemby is actually going to be the face of the league, but Wemby is still out there just on a team, a 20-win team, and we know that he's going to be on competitive teams, if not this next year, but at some point in his future. The teams that Wembanyama will be on will be in championship contention. So just the league was in a spot where it was like, okay, is Jokic going to just be the guy now? And face of the league, but it is in that, is Jokic going to be too much for anybody to overcome? And in that Verstappen type thing where it's like, we don't even need to watch the regular season, because we also know how the Nuggets can treat the regular season, where I felt like this year they were, pretty locked in compared to definitely last year, I guess 2 regular seasons ago now at this point, but their title winning season wasn't necessarily the strongest finish to the regular season. But if there was that, they were on the verge of that inevitability type thing. And the amount of talent in the league, you can see it. It is just a credit to that, honestly. And, obviously it is a credit to, I'm not saying it's not a credit to like Anthony. We're saying Anthony Edwards is like amongst these super talented guys. Obviously, I'm just, for the bloggers for the people that are trying to take us out of context, but for the people that are trying to send another hit on the Rem and Sam podcast, if there's any Anthony Edwards fans, don't send a semi truck to take out Rem or Sam. And, I felt like we've done a good job. I was like, hey, we pod from bunkers, undisclosed locations. I feel like for the most part, we're pretty off the grid when it comes to this stuff, but they were able to track us down. I guess, if anything, we're going to have to tighten those protocols and make sure that we become a little more unfindable in that way if somebody needs to happen. But the point wasn't to not say that Anthony Edwards isn't ascending to becoming the face of the league. The point is that, yeah, they could definitely be the most fearsome team in the West, especially the defensive intensity is just insane. But just on a talent level, like, okay, what Shea is doing and what Doncic is doing, again, I'm not going to just name all the guys again, but what all these guys are doing is on a night-to-night basis. Pause. It's just absolutely, the league is in a great spot. That's just the theme of the season for the NBA. And honestly, could not come at a better time as well, too, with that media rights deal in the wings. I mean, everything that the NBA has been doing this season has been gearing itself toward that. And this is, in a weird way, good for that, because also Jokic is not like in a big market team necessarily. So if Jokic was maybe like LA, and there is market, but if Jokic was in LA and in New York, maybe there would be a little bit, it'd be a bit of a more of a bummer for the NBA if those teams got knocked out. But like last year, if we got another Miami Denver series where I guess Stephen A doesn't mind going to Miami. I guess Milwaukee he does not want a Milwaukee Denver series, but the Nuggets are 20th valued franchise. Now this is as a couple of years ago, so I'm sure that's gone up. That's definitely improved, but not like a high-powered market team that they're losing. Losing the, if the Nuggets get beat, it's obviously the best player in the league going out, but not New York would still be in it. There's still a potential, I guess, Minnesota, New York. Maybe Stephen A wouldn't necessarily be thrilled about Minnesota, New York. The Western cities at this point, not you got Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Denver. The thing is, I think Denver's a kind of, Denver's fine. Denver's great. And Dallas can't be all that bad. Maybe we'll need to swing through if the finals or Western Conference finals are in Dallas. Honestly, Thunder Mavs playoff game that's almost must see TV. Shea versus Doncic. We might have to stop recording here soon just to go catch up on the rest of these playoff games. But yeah, stay tuned to the Rem and Sam feeds, Rem and Sam or Rem and Sam podcast, basically wherever you guys can get your podcast. Was there anything that I had written down that I wanted to mention? Like I said, we'll talk more NBA with Sam. I just have Nikki Glacier lit the place up. So again, shout out to Nikki Glacier. But we will be back this weekend with Sam. Thank you guys for listening. Have a good night.